and welcome along to the final whistle on theirmedia.tv and our usual email info@theirmedia.tv. And thank you for all your comments, and we appreciate them. And I was saying to the lads before we started, we have nice viewership and we're very happy, but that's all down to you guys, nothing to do with me. I'm just a facilitator, if you follow my drift. And then welcome Joe Waters again to the show.
Hello, Pat. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Joe.
Welcome, Chris Price again. Great to have you, lads.
Good evening, guys. Happy Easter to you all.
Happy Easter, and all the eggs are eaten or broken, and today is a bank holiday here where we are in Ireland, bank holiday Monday. And I suppose we're going to start off with soccer, lads. Since we were here last week, Liverpool and Man City were both playing in Europe. They were both playing at the weekend as well. It was a good week for Liverpool in that they qualified for the semi-finals, as did Man City for the semi-finals of the European Cup, along with Villarreal and Real Madrid. So they're the four semi-finalists. What do you think that's how it's shaping up the European Cup, George? You get to see any of that?
I did. I watched. I got to watch both games, and Atletico Madrid, for all their skullduggery and all the stuff they do, when they actually play football, they're a very good team. And I really don't know why he doesn't allow them to play football, because when they, in the second half, when they needed, to win, and they went after it, they looked really good. They looked really, they were a very well coached team. So I just don't know why they go the way they're going. And then, of course, they start getting into this. They're complaining about Man City being time wasting and what have you. Well, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. They're the masters of time wasting. And then it comes back to bite them, and they're not happy about it. But just some of the antics that they get up to. The ex-Manchester City guy that was pulling Grealish's hair and trying to drag Foden back onto the field. Just stuff. And then the tackle by the guy that got sent off eventually. He'd already won the ball. Why he has to do the second part of it is beyond me. And stuff like that hurts your team in the finish. You're down to 10 men.
Yeah. And did you get to see any of those matches during the week, Chris, the European Cup matches?
I did. I think Joe would probably agree with me in saying that the Atletico Madrid match was chickens coming home to roost. You know what I mean? As you said, when I was younger, I'd be giving out about teams time wasting, and someone said to me, "Do you know what? If your team did the same, you wouldn't give out." And that's what you learn with age, and you learn that what swings and roundabouts, what comes around goes round. And Atletico Madrid basically are victims of their own success, because what happened is that other people have now copied them when it comes to time wasting, and that they can't complain, and it's as simple as that. So they basically, they got caught, because when it came to the crunch about chasing the game, while they're good at it, the problem is that if they had put that effort into the first match, then they wouldn't have been in the position that they are, or they were in. So they've got no one to blame for themselves. I think the shock of the round, which really, really got me, was Bayern Munich losing to Villarreal. Didn't see that one coming one bit. I saw the match, but Bayern were all over them. But you know what? There's something missing from Bayern, and I think, while Lewandowski is as good as he is, I think he's coming to the end of his string with Bayern. The rumor has it he's going to Barcelona on a 3-year deal. It's obviously a free transfer, because Barcelona haven't got a pot to pee in, for want of a better expression. So it has to be that a free transfer, so they can pay the man a decent salary. And he's 34. No one else is going to take him at that stage. So there's obviously something wrong with Bayern. They're not being. They're walking away in a non-competitive league. They'll win it on Saturday. They play Dortmund in what's called the Klassiker on Saturday night against Dortmund in Munich. They win that, they win the league, and that will put them 12 points clear with 3 games to go. So that just shows you how mean, there's a 9-point gap, and then there's a following 9 or 10-point gap to the team in third. So the German league has just become uncompetitive. I think this could be even their 10th league in a row. I don't know how you feel about this, lads, but I felt Chelsea were unbelievably unlucky. They were miles better than Madrid, and I thought that they were extremely unlucky with the ball, that if it touched the guy's hand, the hand didn't move towards the ball. He certainly didn't control it. And Mason Mount is, and I just felt that there's no consistency with VAR, because I saw an incident in the FA Cup where a guy controlled the ball with the arm, and just because he didn't shoot but passed to somebody else, the goal stood. And I just can't get that. Can't get that.
I know we've spoken about it here, but in the European Cup, to finish with that, we have 2 English teams and 2 Spanish teams, and I think they're on opposite ends. If you follow my drift, they're both in semi-final. So conceivably, Man City could meet Liverpool in the European Cup final. I don't know. The final is fixed for Paris in any case. That's the European Cup final as far as I know. But getting back to Real Madrid, I mean, really and truly, their winning goal. Sure, I mean, anyone of us would have scored that. I mean, it's a shocking defending that Real Madrid are in the semi-final, you know. But they were dogged as well. What do you think of Real Madrid, George? Do you think they have a threat? Do you think they could win it?
You know, they're a funny team. You know, I mean, Benzema is he is unbelievable at the moment with what he's been doing. And Modric, if you saw that outside of the football that Modric played for one of their goals, I mean, that was absolutely spectacular. So they have the ability to do that, but I think defensively that they can be caught. And I think that City, with what they have got offensively, will be a little bit too much, especially if De Bruyne is fit and he can play. We saw how important he is to the City team, and I mean, he's another one that's just playing brilliantly at the minute. But I really think that maybe the semi-final is as far as they go on this one. I have a sneaky suspicion that that City are going to go all the way this time. And I think that I think that Guardiola picked a team yesterday for the semi-final of the Cup that kind of indicated that. I mean, he left 5 guys from the starting lineup in Madrid against Atleti the other night, and he left them on the bench and didn't bring them on. So that really told you kind of his commitment to the FA Cup. I think that the League Championship and the Champions League are the 2 big ones for him this year.
Yeah, well, you could be right there, because Liverpool, look, they cruised to victory. Forget about the match wasn't great, you know, between Liverpool and Man City in the Cup. I saw a good lot of it. Chris, do you think Liverpool could be European Cup champions?
Well, to be honest with you, they could be. I mean, there's nothing that, I mean, the draw has been favouring them, right? But I would, if they think they're going to underestimate and think they have it easy against Villarreal, they can forget about it. I mean, they look at this as an opportunity as well, because, you know, they can't believe they're getting so far. And I think Villarreal have a free pass at this one, because no one's expecting them. I will differ with Joe here. I actually do think Real Madrid could catch City. I think Madrid won again last. They beat Sevilla. They were 2-0 down, 1-3-2. Benzema's on form. He's on fire. The guy is scoring goals as if it's coming out of fashion. And I think while there's a case for saying that they're going to the well too often, this reminds me of when Man United were a pump and were able to win matches when they were not playing well. And you know what? Madrid could do this. I just have this sneaky feeling for them, because I've seen Man City in these positions let themselves down over the last few years, and the only case that I could have for City is that they're under no illusions playing Real Madrid. Right? They can't be complacent. They won't be complacent. So that's the only
No.
thing that I would say will go in Man City's favour. But I wouldn't be surprised if Madrid catch them. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I mean, obviously, moving on to the Premiership, we have the the continuation. Man United eventually did beat the bottom team of the Premiership after throwing away a 2-goal lead. They won 3-2. Now, I mean, obviously, they've been much maligned, but there's an outside chance they could still finish in the top 4. Newcastle, of course, won 2-1 against Leicester, who seem to be on the slide, Leicester City. And Southampton beat Arsenal 1-0. But to me, I don't know if you take any notice, to me, one of the unsung heroes and one of the unsung teams I was looking through the Premiership teams this year, so far to me, is Brighton and Hove Albion, to give them their proper name. And Brighton, you know, they beat Spurs 1-0, but they're in their top 10, Brighton. They have, I mean, I was looking at the club, I mean, you won't get all the information. The finances of the club are sound, but they don't have huge money. They have a small enough squad, but they're playing very well. And they're not, I think to me, they're the heroes of the Premiership at the moment, Brighton, to me, at present day, Chris. I don't know what you think of that.
But themselves in Brentford, you know, but, you know, I mean, it seems to me as if nobody actually wants to finish 4th this year. I mean, you look at Arsenal. I mean, how could a team like Southampton lose 6-0 at home to Chelsea and go and beat Arsenal 1-0? It doesn't make sense. Those things shouldn't happen, but they happen because it's England. It just because every match is competitive. And
Yes.
Spurs had a big win 2 weeks ago. Now they lose to Brighton. It just shows you if you don't show up, you're going to get found out. And you know I mean, when Joe was playing English League football, they were playing 42, 46 matches. These guys only play 36, and they don't really give a damn about the cup. While in Joe's day, the cup was the be all and end all. So I mean, and these guys are getting vastly sums of money compared to what they got in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you know what? There's no excuse for them. I mean, they're well-funded clubs, but Brighton, a bit like Brentford and Bournemouth and teams like that, they're small clubs. They are very, very community family operations. And I think once you see family-based community operations like that, they just seem to they play more for the community than some of the bigger teams do for their communities.
I've just been handed a note, lads. I started to butt in now. I would say by my producer that just news just has to come in on the thing, and it's sad news really. Cristiano Ronaldo's his newborn child has just died, passed away.
Oh my God.
Obviously, that will have a devastating effect, obviously, as parents, mum and dad.
Just on that, I think you just need to clarify that, because I heard it before I came up here. They were expecting twins. The newborn girl survived. The boy didn't survive, I think. So they were expecting twins. There is a girl who was born. It's so sad that the boy didn't make it. Nobody knows what the circumstances are.
Indeed, it keeps things in perspective for everyone. But I mean, obviously, what was I going to say? We were talking about Brighton and Brentford being the leading lights and things. But just another bit of news today. Actually, today, Derby County have been relegated to League One today. It's just confirmed the results today. Now, I mean, we discussed them, I think, a good while ago, you know, what was done to them and the appalling meting out of punishment to Derby County just because they weren't a big club, like, say, Man City. They had more or less the same troubles and travails with money and all of that. And really, I think it's sad. They were docked 21 points. And I mean, how can you expect a club to start off by losing 7 games? Because that's what it was. You're down -7 games already before you began the season, which was shocking to me, you know? I don't know, really.
It's disgraceful. I mean, they did the same thing to Stockport County. They docked Stockport County a number of points, and now they're non-league. They missed out on staying up, I think, by the last day of the season. But
Did he?
you know, to not be fair across the board, it just seems to me to be. I mean, it's so ridiculous that you can do it to the lower level clubs, but you never do it to the big boys, and that just seems unbelievable to me.
Can anybody remember? I didn't look up this. I should have looked it up. I don't remember any Premier League club ever being docked points ever since '95, since this new Premier League set up was. Chris, do you remember any Premier League club ever being docked points?
I think there was a docking of points over a match that wasn't played. It could have been, I'm not so sure. I do remember there was, not for financial impropriety, but definitely over the not playing of a match.
yeah.
There was maybe docking. But I take your point. The point is that financial fair play is a great concept, but not a reality.
You're right there. You're right
It's
there.
terrible. I mean, it's terrible. I just don't get it. That's what makes, that's what makes the likes of Brentford and Brighton, and you're just talking about them. Ironically, Brighton were booed off the field by their home fans 2 weeks ago because they couldn't score a goal at home, and yet they go on the road and they get a good result at Spurs. And then you have Brentford. The top earner at Brentford makes 50,000 a week. That's the highest paid player at the club, 50 grand a week.
Well, there you
compared
go.
to the rest.
Yeah, Brentford beat Watford 2-1, and my team, my tip for to come up, Luton Town, they beat Notts Forest. That was a huge blow to Notts Forest because that put them back. But I think Notts Forest has to have a good chance of coming up, and Luton won again today. Luton Town, that is. So I mean, really, they're consolidating their playoff. They're in the playoff position, but still, I think they might come up. As I said, I have an affinity for them because I know their ground well, Kenilworth Road and all of that. It's a romantic football back in the Premiership again, a nice ground, something like Loftus Road, when you can almost touch the players, as during Loftus Road,
Yeah.
It's good. Anyway, the final whistle is by the way, we must just mention Sean Dyche was let go by Burnley with 8 games left, lads. I've no idea why he was let go. Maybe the interview he gave 2 weeks ago, but about no investment in the club and all of that. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. He's the 10th manager to get his P45. I think it was very unfair myself to leave Sean Dyche go with 8 games to go. I don't know what the thinking is behind it. I mean, will it affect the club?
They're going down anyway. Let's be fair.
They're
going down.
That's the thing. They are, and I think that there's more behind the scenes than we know about this, because Sean Dyche at one stage was instrumental in everything that was going on at the club. He used to even sit in on board meetings and help make decisions and stuff like that. And then the previous owner all of a sudden cut him out of that. And the new ownership, he hasn't had a great relationship with them. And it's ironic, really, because he just signed a new 5-year contract a few months ago with the new owner.
Last September. Yeah.
So now, you would think that they would go the distance with him and then, pull the trigger in the summer and get somebody new in. But now here you go again. These guys are talking. I read in the paper this morning. These guys are talking about bringing in a temporary guy before they start a serious search for a successor. So I don't see what a temporary. Has anybody looked at Man United and seen what a mess that was with a temporary guy?
Yeah. But Sean Dyche himself, I mean, obviously he's laughing all the way to the bank, and we don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, I'm saying Burnley themselves, Sean Dyche, you must remember, they got relegated with him as manager and he brought him back up again, as you know.
Right.
He brought him back up to the Premiership. Look, I'm not blowing my trumpet for Sean Dyche, but I think it smacks of just bad planning. And
There's been a row behind the scenes. I mean, there has been a row behind the scenes. You know, as Joe said, that interview 2 weeks ago may have played a part, but something has gone on behind the scenes that, you know, they've made a decision to cut him off now with 6 games to go. Their position is perilous. They've nobody there to take on board, to take him over. And then again, who would take him at this stage? Right? How long would they get?
The usual suspects.
The usual
Sam
suspects.
Allardyce.
But you know what? The usual suspects are staying quiet this time.
Yeah.
Well, I heard. Well, obviously, one name has been mentioned in the press over the weekend. That was Sam Allardyce.
But he's mentioned everywhere.
I know.
You know, I mean, in fairness, if Kazakhstan sacked their manager, Sam Allardyce being in the frame for that job as well. For God's sake, let's be fair.
Well,
I mean, it's now become a running joke.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, if the Cork hurlers were looking for a manager after yesterday, Sam Allardyce would be in the running for that as well.
No, I'll put my hand up there. But there was before we leave soccer, obviously Burnley, they had a credible draw with West Ham, in my opinion. I think that was a good point for them over the weekend. Let's acknowledge that. The final whistle is the program on learnmedia.tv. Info@learnmedia is our email. I'm with Joe and Chris tonight, and hope you're in. And thanks to all the people who take the time to listen, and press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe to our channel. We move swiftly down to the funny shaped ball rugby. Now, my friend out in the next room was doing security at Thomond Park over the weekend. So, I mean, they had a thumping win. That's Munster. They beat Exeter. And Leinster had their walk in the park victory as well. Ulster lost out by a point. And my old team I'm keeping an eye on over there in France, coached by Rog, La Rochelle, they won as well. They beat Bordeaux. So they're into the quarterfinals, and they'll be playing Montpellier in the quarterfinals. That's La Rochelle. But did you see any of the rugby over the weekend, lads? No?
Saw the second half of Munster.
Yeah.
I didn't see.
Saw the second half of Munster.
Yeah. It was
tight
a
enough.
victory. It was a victory.
A win's a win. In that stage, the win is a win. That's all that matters. A win is a win. You know what I mean? They excuse me, they basically won that game in the first leg by limiting the damage. They looked beaten in the first half of the first leg. They somehow managed to put it within 5 points, gave them a platform, even though they kind of struggled. I didn't see the first half, but from what I saw in the second half, they grounded out. They scored a great try with about 10 minutes to go, which basically sealed it for them. But do you know what? It actually, I think the draw suits them. I know they have to go to Dublin now because of Mr. Sheeran's coming to Ireland. But you know what? I think if they get 50,000 Munster fans into Lansdowne Road, would be nobody from Toulouse there. So it'd be a cauldron. It'd be a home. It's a home way. It's a home match away from their traditional home. Hey, they don't have far to travel. Yeah. I'll give them a great spot for that one.
I think they'll have it. I think they'll have it tough against Toulouse. That's my opinion for what it's worth.
Ulster should have beaten them. I watched the entire Ulster match against Toulouse. Yeah. One crazy decision by the Ulster man, Tom O'Toole, where he got sent off, where he just went. There's something radically wrong in rugby about the way that they're tackling. And Sam Warburton said it about a month or so ago on BBC, a half-time one of the Six Nations. They just don't know how to tackle. I mean, Bundy Aki was another guy that basically cost Connacht the match on Friday night. And I said this at the time to the young lad. I says, I wouldn't be surprised. It should have been a sending off. He got away with it. The guy is an absolute red card waiting to happen. And the guy for Ulster had that game. It was tight, but they were absolutely brilliant. But once it went to 14 men, they were never going to win that game. And it was just, again, for professional players, they just can't seem to get the tackle right. And they're tackling too high. They're not wrapping their arms. They're going in with the shoulder. They're hitting the head. It's far too high. It's far too dangerous. And, you know, when you hear, and I think people should remind themselves of Steve Thompson, who was hooker for England 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago in the World Cup for England. He is now got the onset of dementia where he doesn't even know his wife's name, and he's only about 45, 46, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening now, is that these guys are getting hit too high, too often, and they just cannot cope from it.
Well, it is a problem, as we discussed in one of the programs about injuries in rugby, because these are massive men, like, and they're all muscle, and really, but commiserations to us, so they lost out by a point to lose cumulatively when they had up to 2 matches together. So it was tough going for them. But we wish Munster and Leinster are carrying the flag for Ireland, and there's a good few French teams and left in the last 8, is it? Quarterfinals, yeah.
Quarterfinals, yeah.
Yeah, quarterfinals. So as I said, I don't know who Leinster are playing Leicester away. Leicester. Yeah. That's who they are. The Leicester will be tough. Leicester will be tough. You know, they'll be tough. Anyway, that's the rugby. Also, the golf. Did you see any of the golf over the weekend? Mr. Lowry did well. I was disappointed in him that he didn't fucking go on and win it. You know, I was just disappointed. You know, that ball into the water did him in. Joe, did you see a bit of the golf?
I did. I watched it, and Jordan Spieth came back and won it, didn't he?
Yeah,
he did in the playoff.
Yeah, and when I was watching, I thought it was set up for Lowry to have a go at it. Cantley was winning at the time, and then I had to leave. I had to go out, and then the next thing I heard was that Spieth had come back and won it. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those things. You know, I just hope that Shane Lowry doesn't become an early man. You know, that he needs to get his foot in the door and win one.
Was it Parry Harrington at about 9 or 10 second place? Remember Chris Aliani's career?
Yeah.
9 or 10 second place is Parry Harrington.
Yeah, there was the joke. The joke was going around. They were going to get my bridesmaid outfit instead of a golf trousers.
and he won 3 majors after. Look, I think
look. The story about Lowry was this, right? Is that, you know, let's be fair to the man, right? If you go back to say maybe 10 years ago, you'd be thinking, you know, he won the Irish Open as an amateur. I saw him play then. I was at the tournament, and about a year or two later, you'd be thinking, you know, is this guy actually going to make it? Is he going to be one of those guys that go onto the PGA and is going to be a journeyman? Let's be fair to the man. He has made an absolutely brilliant career out of what he's done, right? He's probably got more out of it than we expected. Let's be brutally fair. I remember listening to an interview on News Talk with him, and he basically castigated the guy when he says, "Are you a bit concerned, you know, where your game is at the moment? You dropped out of the 100 in the world." And he says, "Would you listen to yourself? 100 in the world. It's a big world out there. 100 in the world." He says, "If I was 200 in the world, I'd be happy with that." He says, "I have no concerns in my game." And that was about 5 years ago, right? And he's won the British Open, and he's improved his game to a point where he's had 1 second and 2 third places so far this year. He's made 2.7 million this year so far, and we haven't even reached the end of April. And there's 3 majors to go, right? The guy is now 27th in the world, right? The only criticism I would have with him is that when he's in contention, and it's happened a couple of weeks now, when he lets one loose, he lets one brutally loose, like he did in the 6th in Augusta, and he did last night where he went in. It was an awful drive, and he, in fairness, he was struggling in the back 9 last night with his tee shots. It wasn't just the one tee shot; it was about 4 or 5 tee shots that went desperately awry. And his scrambling skills and his putting was brilliant last night. Let's be fair, but there's only a bit like what we said about other teams. There's only a certain amount of times you can go to that well and draw from it. And I think when it came to about the 14th to 15th, he kind of drew too many times from it.
Well, he had 3 rounds in the 60s, 64 first round, 72, and then he had a 65 and 69 and speed.
Yeah, but the 69, yes. See, the problem is the 69, in all honesty, should have been a 66. And in Augusta, in the last round, he was 4 shots better than what he finished with. But he just, you know, he reminds me of someone that I know very, very close to me who is not putting in the scores. His play is better than his scores suggest.
Right. Yeah. They're in red and white. And
I'm
also
talking about I'm talking about my golf game, to be totally honest with you.
yeah. And Leonie Maguire was playing in the Lottie Championship, the Cameron Girls. She had pretty dismal tournament, in fairness. There was 5 Koreans. I'm not going to, one Korean won it, and that's not being disparaging, I think. H.J. Kim, she won it with 1100. Maguire finished at +3, Leonie Maguire, with rounds of 71. And then she had 75 and 76 and finished with a 69. She came back well in the last round, but she finished up in the top 45, but in the Lottie Championship, which is one of the big ones, start to the women's here. But really, hopefully, she can only get better. We can wish her well. But that was Jordan Smith. Would he be in contention now for the Open?
Well, you don't. I wouldn't even think of the Open at the moment. You've got the PGA is on next month, and then the US Open in June, which I think you're referring to the British Open in July. But
yeah.
I would think the major now next month, the PGA, yeah, he'll give that one a blast, as well as the US Open. I think he's back. He's back. He played extremely well last night. Not easy to finish it. I think Cantley made a big mistake on the first play in the first playoff hole by thinking that, as the commentator said, he was getting too cute. He thought, because instead of just putting the ball on the green and playing proper match play and going by where his opponent was, he went into the bunker. And Cantley decided to be too cute and try and draw the ball around, and it didn't work out. He got it wrong, went into the bunker. But what happened was he was actually plugged into the bunker, which is far, far harder. But the shot that Speed played out of the bunker to within like 6 inches won in the tournament, while Cantley just got too cute.
Yeah, I see the end of it. I was actually on YouTube. But anyway, that was the golf. And obviously, lots to talk about. The Irish Grand National for those horse racing was on today. I didn't watch it. I forgot all about it. But Lion was Linear, I forget his name now, who won it. He was 40-1 winner. I don't think many people were on him. Now, I was just reading over the week, lads. I know, do you remember, just briefly touching, we spoke about doping in sport. We always seem to speak about doping in sport to some degree or another, and the lack of attention paid to people who are coming back, who are allowed back into the game again, into athletics I'm talking about now. Alison Felix is retiring at the end of the championships this year. She's 36 years of age. She's a mum. She's won 11 Olympic medals and 13 world titles. I don't you remember a couple of years back when she was pregnant, she had her child, and she was had a big sponsorship deal going at the time for a few years with Nike. That was one of her sponsors, right? And Nike decided that because she was on maternity leave, they were going to reduce her contract, her financial part of the contract, by 70%. So Alison Felix went public over it, went on the networks, NBC particularly and all, and said this is desperately unfair. And as a result of the embarrassment caused to Nike, I mean, she's entitled to time off after having a child, you know. She was still able to fulfill her media duties, because I mean, you don't have to be running to fulfill your media duties. The heel of the hunt, anyways, they changed their rules, Nike, their sponsorship rules. It's unfair, really, because she was a superstar to me. For anybody who follows athletics, she was just a genuine superstar and a very articulate lady. Now, at the same time, there were some athletics meetings on over the weekend in the United States, and I know, do you remember the world 100 meters record holder, Christian Coleman? Christian Coleman, for people who mightn't remember athletics, he's the 100 world 100 meters champion, the present champion, and he was banned for 18 months on a drugs issue. He was coming back. He was entered into this race in America to make his comeback in this 200 meters race, and apparently, when his name was called out as an entry for the 200 meters, there was such an amount of booing and kerfuffle that he withdrew from the race. He didn't participate. So you can see now that the awareness of drugs in sport is not good, lads. All this carry on. Another Kenyan athlete, well-known Kenyan athlete, they're going back on our records, not to labour the point too much. Joyous Kirui. People will know her photograph when they see it later on. She's been banned for 4 years for doping, and as a result of her banning, another carry on, Kenya, that's the country of Kenya, from athletic speaking, is up to grade A by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Body, and that means that every single athlete participating will have 10 to 12 extra tests carried out on them. That's what that means for athletics in Kenya, which is a shame because they've produced many fine athletes. But we're talking about why don't they allow everybody to take drugs in athletics when they're running? Because there's
that's a real good question. I mean, obviously, I mean, it's enhancing their performance, and I don't know. I mean, we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago. If somebody has done their time, then they should be allowed back and what have you. But if you've been banned once and you get a second chance at it, then I think if it's the second time, then you should be banned for life with it. And I think that they just have to be strict with it. I mean, I don't get it myself. I just saw an article here last week. A guy called Bob Baffert. He's a horse trainer here in the US, very famous. Yeah. He's horse won, I think, the Kentucky Derby last year, and was found to have been drugged, and the title was taken away from him, and he got some kind of a suspension. But in horse racing, that seems to be, that's all that happens. You get a slap on the wrist, you lose the title, and away you go. I just don't know.
Before I come to you, Chris, what prompted me in this was that there was I came across an interview with Johnson, the Canadian sprinter, Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the 1988 Olympic final where 5 out of the 6 were found to be dopers. But Ben Johnson was given the interview, and as a result of that, we sent an email to whoever's looking after him, see can we get an interview with him, Now, Ben Johnson obviously was caught doping, and he obviously said, look, I shouldn't have done it. He put his hands up and all of that. I'm not exonerating him, and I'm saying, he was saying to the interviewer, just common knowledge from the early 80s that top-class athletes in nearly all athletics, field athletes, were doping. And there were certain athletes who were targeted and certain athletes who were not. Or if they were, there was never any information came out. Like Carl Lewis, for instance, in 84 in Los Angeles, was it, Chris, was it?
That's 84 in Los Angeles, yeah, with 4 gold medals.
Yeah, and 88. Wasn't he found to be doping afterwards?
I don't know 100% sure, so I'm going to be very careful what I say here. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'm only just guessing now.
I don't know. I'm not even going to guess at it. I'm not even going to guess.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is that it has to be, whatever you're doing has to be consistent. We had that controversy with the Russian skater in the last Olympics, the ice skater.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then they brought up the one about there was a girl that was US, and she was found to have smoked marijuana before one of her races, and the US Olympic Committee banned her from
participating.
Right?
Yeah.
Yet the girl from Russia had 2 previous tests in Russia, but because the Russian Olympic Federation didn't ban her and didn't report it, she was okay to go to the Olympics. So, you know, you have rules within rules that
I know.
and you know, you get, and then you go to the, you know, you go to the next step of it. You know, Waters' hands are sometimes tied by the by CAS. They'll overrule them when they get to there and saying that you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, if you're cheating, you're cheating. You know, when the gun goes off, if you start running before the gun goes off, then the race restarts. Because in essence, you're obviously trying to time it, but you're also trying to gain an advantage. And that you know, the same thing with that. And if you get too many false starts, I believe you're suspended from the race.
You're disqualified, right?
Yeah, you're disqualified. Yeah. So again, I don't know why, you know, for the more important things like the drug stuff, why they just can't be more strict there.
Yeah, the final whistle is a program on our media. We'll have more of that and on, I suppose, no doubt. It's just a shame, really. As I said, tongue in cheek, I said, look, everybody should be allowed to take drugs. I don't really mean that.
Well, it's funny you should say that, right? Because basically, if you remember the old just cycling controversies over the last 15, 20 years,
yeah,
especially the one we'll remember that with the Tour de France starting in Dublin in 1998 and the Festina scandal and what happened there, where there was just systematic drugs that were being brought into Ireland through France from Spain. And then you had what happened with Sky with the Chris Froome stuff, and you know, there was some hints and allegations about Bradley Wiggins and stuff like that. And you know, right. it led to the head of the German public broadcaster ARD to turn around and stop broadcasting for a number of years the Tour de France, and says we're not paying to see which pharmaceutical company can cycle faster than the next pharmaceutical company. So they stopped it for a few years, and then cycling started because the big money comes from Germany with sport. And I'll give you an example of what I mean there, right? Is that if you remember maybe about, say, 10 or 15 years ago when Ireland were playing Germany in Dublin in soccer, German public broadcasting paid 8 million for that match to the FIA alone. You know, RT probably paid about 20,000, right? 8 million. They paid 8 million for that match, right? So Germany, and a bit like, I know it's a bit side issue about Eurovision, but Germany are one of those countries that pay the most into the Eurovision, to Eurovision, right? So they hold sway in a lot of these things. So they themselves, the Brits, the Spanish, the Italians, and I think the French, they're the top 5 donators to Eurovision. And it's not just on song contests, it's on broadcasting events for sport. So their view holds sway. So if the likes of Tour de France are losing a huge chunk of money because the Germans are saying 9, bitte, then basically what happens is that the penny drops and they say, well, we really do need to clean our act up. And that's what it's going to take, Pat. It's going to take broadcasters like from Germany, BBC, to say, do you know what? We're not interested in having to see which guy gets his needles in his arm better than somebody else. And they will stop doing it. And once they stop doing it, then WADA, CAS, and everybody else will then start taking it as serious as they're not doing at the moment.
That's true. You're listening to the final whistle on their media. Tell all your friends about us. Press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe. Now, over the weekend, we had the beginning of the senior football and senior hurling championships, which began, I think, on a Saturday for the football, Tyrone and all. But anyway, over the weekend, in hurling, we had wins for Kilkenny, Waterford and Limerick, so which means they have a big advantage. And also in the football, Tyrone won, Sligo are big winners in football. So next weekend is another bumper weekend. But over the weekend, Chris, I suppose now it's only the first game in the round robin. There's 4 games to go. They have 3 more games left. But obviously Limerick, being the champions, being the whole of Liam McCarthy, are well well there now, and Waterford beat Tipperary, and then we beat Cork, obviously. Waterford beat Tip. So the meeting next Saturday night at 7:00 between Limerick and Waterford will tell us something along the road, will it?
It will be a humdinger on Saturday evening, because basically you're going to have two teams that are at it. I mean, people were saying about Limerick this and Limerick that, and I suppose we were probably guilty of it here because of their disciplinary. But they seem to basically know what they're doing down there. They just thought, you know what, the league is going to be used to blood a few players. They were into, obviously it seems to be they were into serious heavy training, and they had targeted. And here's the thing, lads, this year's All-Ireland Championship is run over 14 weeks, and they've the first week down, and they have set an unbelievable marker now, because what they've done is they've said, right, lads, if you want to beat us, you're not going to have to go through us. You're going to have to try and go around us. So you need to be good at that too. And what they have done is that they have now, I think they're firm favourites to win it. I thought Galway would have a say in this year's All-Ireland Championship, but after watching them play against Wexford on Saturday evening, I'm going to think, well, typical old Galway, they flattered to deceive once again. Waterford be there or thereabouts. Don't rule out Tip. I think Tip were okay. They weren't expected to win. They had their chances, but I fear for Cork. I think I was talking to a friend this evening, and I think Cork GAA will really need to look at themselves in the mirror and think to themselves, what are we about here? Are we here for the promotion of Gaelic games in Cork City and County, or are we now seen as a money-making exercise with Páirc Uí Chaoimh? Because, and you may laugh at this, but I take this ultimately so serious, because they got 30 million of taxpayers' money to build that stadium for the purpose of Gaelic games in Cork and Cork City and County. And the Cork County Board have basically tied both hands behind their collective hurlers and footballers behind the back this year by basically saying, no, we're going to have to play Clare, which was one of our home matches, and we're going to play it in Thurles. And they have told their footballers, you're not good enough to play in our stadium. You can go and play it in a small little park you're in, which holds about 9,000, or you can toddle off to Killarney and you can get that match back next year if you're any good. And the footballers have basically turned around and says, well, it's either park you in or nowhere. And you know what? That was 2 weeks ago and nothing's been said since. And that match is due to be played in a couple of weeks. So we'd like to see how that one's going to pan out. But I just think Cork as a county, the biggest county in Ireland, the most successful county in Ireland in hurling and football, it saddens me because I have Cork blood in me. And I just think they have lost their way. They've lost their way big time.
Well, just to clarify for people, and they probably know all this, the Ed Sheeran concert in Páirc Uí Chaoimh was fixed before the fixtures and the split season were decided by the GAA in Dublin. So that was the dilemma. And the same, obviously, in Thomond Park and Limerick, these were fixed before the dates for these. There's a
difference, Pat. And I hang on a second. There's an absolute difference here, right? And Joe he may back me up in it. He may have another view. The fact of the matter is this: is that the GAA are amateur bodies, amateur players, right? Yeah. That they need their officials to back them up whenever they need it. And what Cork have done, and you can look, fair enough. You can say what you want about the Ed Sheeran concerts and all that, but Páirc Uí Chaoimh was built with taxpayers' money for the purposes of playing Gaelic games in Cork.
Exactly, the same as Park was, yeah.
But the difference about Thomond Park is that they are a professional body. Thomond Park is a professional body and there was no taxpayers' money that went into Thomond Park.
Oh, they got grants. They got big grants.
There's a difference between grants and there's a difference between taxpayers' money.
To the extent taxpayers' money goes into grants as well, Chris. So,
to the extent, hang on a second, they certainly didn't get 30 million.
The Thomond Park,
absolutely.
Look up the figures.
They didn't get 30 million.
The Munster Rugby and the RFU did not build Thomond Park out of their own resources. I can tell you that.
Well, I put it this way, right? I take on board what you say, But the point I'm making about Cork is this, right? That if you were playing hurling football this year for Cork, and you see the way that and this has been going on for a couple of years now, the way the Cork have been treating their own players, right? There's something seriously wrong in Cork at the moment, because if you go back to the last 15, 20 years to the guys who were on the strike when the Cork hurlers down tools 15, 20 years ago, there's only one player that's ever been involved in a Cork senior hurling team over that time, and that's Diarmuid O'Sullivan, the Rock, and he's only a selector. Now, you have to ask yourselves, what did Cork learn since last August against Limerick to yesterday? Absolute nothing. So what's going on for a county that has 500,000 people population?
Well, nearly all that team that time are coaching the senior club teams around the county. For instance, Ben O'Connor is touted as the next Cork manager to take over, and he may be sooner rather than later, because the management of the Cork hurling team, not to make this Cork team, obviously Ed Sheeran didn't make Cork hurlers. Put up that performance yesterday. They've learned nothing since the All-Ireland last year. In fact, they've regressed under the present regime. And if the Cork County Board have a serious concern about hurling in Cork, they should clear the decks, because they have a 2 weeks break. They'll clear the decks, get in a few people to handle the team for the rest of the season.
That won't happen. Too late. It's too late. Damage is done, mate. Damage is done.
They're going to do nothing with the present thing. And obviously, we all know, I saw it myself in Croke Park last year against Kilkenny. We all know when a player's at the end of their term. Joe, you see it in soccer, you know yourself. You want to get over there to that part of the field to get the ball. Your head tells you can, but your body won't let you. Your body won't let you go over there. And that's because time has caught up with you. And that's what's wrong with about 7 or 8 of that Cork teams since last year. And they're still there.
But I mean, would it matter? I mean, in Gaelic games, and to be honest, I was absolutely gobsmacked to see how far Cork had fallen by the wayside, because in my time they were dominant in football and in hurling. So it just shocks me that a county like that has fallen so far. And I mean, at this stage of the game, is a manager really going to make that much of a difference for them, or is the structure beneath it not in place to start? Like you're saying, that there's 6 or 7 of these guys that should not be playing now. They should be thinking about retiring. But are there players there to take their place?
They're not there.
They've got success with the last 2 or 3 years with the under-20s and the minors.
They
have. Other counties have seamlessly drafted in under-20 hurlers to their teams. There's no reason to why that they work.
No, you cannot put. You can't
we
put
have one hurler from the under-20s playing, and he was the best player on the pitch for Cork yesterday.
Yeah, but you're not. You cannot put. I mean, hang on a second. There's a big difference here now of the structure, because it's now gone from under 21 to under 20. So most of them are effectively 19-year-olds. If you're asking for 7 19-year-olds to be put into that Cork team now, you're asking for big trouble against men, absolute men, and muscle that Limerick. I mean, you look at Gord Hegarty had his best game in 2 years. He looked so laid back. He was horizontal. He didn't even have to break sweat. He hit one ball on his stride from against the breeze from halfway. It didn't even deviate in the wind. Right? You had Diarmuid Burns, who basically plucked. You know what? I tell you what was significant. The young lad said to me yesterday, watching the game, look at Cian Lynch hasn't been mentioned here, nor has Declan Hanlon. I says that's because they don't have to be. Limerick had so many fellas around that Cian Lynch at centre forward and Declan Hanlon at the pivotal number 6 were able to just had a walk in the park. They didn't have to play well because everyone else was doing it for them. I said this to you here about 2 or 3 weeks ago after the league final, that Cork were in serious trouble in defence when Waterford could have scored 4 goals and should have scored 7. I mean, when you saw the second goal go in, that was it. The game was over. They were 4 points down at half time and the game was seriously over, because I've never seen a team that they were playing hurling the way they were trying to play soccer. They were trying to pass across the back 4 because there was no runs. But the reason why no one was making a run was because they were given no signals to like make a move or whatever. They were just hammered.
They have
And it
no,
just,
you know yourself, Chris. They have no leaders on the field in here as well. To be quite
but
honest.
I understand that. The point of the matter is this: is that
They're
for the
appalling.
county, but the problem with Cork have at the moment is this: the structure in their championship and whatever is that all the club matches seen. You look at the Monday papers in the sports results, and you see what Black Cork are scoring 1 goal and 28 points, and another team is scoring 2 goals and 32 points. They can all take shots from halfway, but but what's happening is that, and this happened 8 years ago when Cork were playing Clare, when Clare scored 5 goals in the replay against them. Clare ran at them. When you run out, Cork just don't have natural cornerback defenders that will stick to you like glue. They let their man off. Why? Because they're not expected to be used as defenders, because the shots in their club level are coming from 80, 90 yards out. That's the difference. So when you see the likes of Limerick and Waterford going straight through the middle, they can't cope with that kind of hurling because what's he doing with the ball? Why is he running at me for? That's the main difference. They're not used to defending.
The other point is that they're not, the physicality isn't there either. Look, what I'm seeing is that Limerick and Waterford next Saturday night. Cork are playing Clare in the next match in 2 weeks. That'll be a battle of the third place.
But I'm going down to Tip and Clare next Monday. I've been forced into Tip and Clare next week.
Well, Clare are in a fantastic position all of a sudden, and I don't mean that with anything. I'm saying that if they beat Tipperary, they would really fancy the game against Cork to win it as well, and that'll put them in the frame.
Well, they then have 2 home matches against Limerick and Waterford. You know, and the match against Waterford could easily find themselves, you know, playing against a team that have already qualified.
And themselves could be qualified.
Could do. I don't think so, Pat. I don't think so. I think the top 3 in Munster is going to be Limerick, Waterford, Tip. I think Clare and Cork will miss out.
I think Limerick, Waterford, and I'll be picking dark horses. I'll be picking Clare. I haven't seen them yet playing, but I'll be picking them. if for any other reason that I'm living there.
Because you mightn't get home tonight. Is that what you're trying to say to us?
But anyway, do we get that, Joe? Do you get a chance to see any GA matches on any channel over there?
No. I have. I watched the All-Ireland final, last year because I was able to. I was able to do a one-off and get the game for a day.
The GA Go one, yeah.
Yeah, but I have not. Actually, I saw something on email the other day that they wanted me to do a year-round one, so I think I'll have to look into doing that. I wanted to see the Limerick Cork match yesterday, just because of all the talk that we've had leading up to it about Limerick.
I know,
not being that.
Well, in fairness yourself now, you missed very little apart from the fact that Limerick hammered Cork, because next Saturday night will potentially at 7 p.m. Irish time will be just down the road from us here, will be a humdinger between Limerick and Waterford. It has the potential to be one of the matches of the championship, Chris, I think, you know.
Could easily be the foretaste to an All-Ireland final.
And I'd be thinking that way myself, you know. It's 1959 since Waterford won the All-Ireland, by the way, lads, in case anyone of you watching may not remember. And I saw that team playing, that 1959 team playing in a league match against Cork down in Fermoy. So that's not the deal yesterday, as I said. That was one of my first matches I remember going to with my dad. Anyway, the World Snooker just started this week in the Crucible, and there's been quite amount of complaints from some of the professional players participating. They said it's outdated, outmoded. There's no corporate facilities and all of that going with the Crucible. The venue is too small, and there's only 800 or 990 or something go into it. They were moved. It should be moved to Alexandra Palace and all. There's a point to be made in that. I don't know.
No, because listen, I know I grew up across the road from Alexandra Palace, and if you ever watch the Masters or the snook or the darts there, the World Championships would be nothing more than a zoo if it was in Alexandra Palace. It's in
Oh, yeah.
Sheffield. Oh, stop. All you have to do is watch the Masters. There's no decorum. It's too rowdy. You couldn't play 2 matches together like that. Look, hey, listen, what are they complaining about? It's the biggest tournament in the year. It's the most lucrative tournament. You get 500,000 to win. You get 30,000 for showing up as a first round loser. Get over it. Play the game you've been playing all your life. As someone who likes snooker, and straight after this show, we'll be going down to watch the last of the couple of frames tonight. Okay, I would give my right arm, would probably be no good to me in the end, to play snooker in the Crucible. But you know what? What are they? I mean, I guarantee you, if they put it in Alexander Palace, there'd be complaints about there. It's too noisy. They're selling too much drink. Come on, get over yourselves, lads.
Maybe, but one of your Sullivan Money's match anyway, and also Mark Williams won the class of '92. They're still going strong.
Williams looks good.
Mark Williams looked very good to me. Looked very sharp, you know. Still at this stage, and I think Robertson is leading 6-3, I think, or something like that. Neil Robertson.
He hasn't played well at the World Championship, even when sometimes he's favoured. I'd be wary. I think Robertson's a class act. I think he's one of probably the best. He on his form, he could beat anybody. He's for some reason the last couple he'll win a first round or second round. He'll come across the quarterfinal and get stuffed. So I'd be wary of that. Selby actually is scoring high this year compared to what he normally does. Depending on the draw, you'd have to give. It's early yet, but you know it's going to come down to 4 or 5 players: the Rocket, Selby, Judd Trump, Mark Williams, and Robertson. They'd be my top 5.
Yeah, and Barry Hawkins was beaten. I always liked watching him, but anyway, he had a good chance a couple of years back, but he didn't take it.
To be totally honest with you, the top 16 and the 16 qualifiers, it is one of the strongest 16 qualifiers that has ever been. I mean, yes. Ding is a qualifier.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays Kyron Wilson, who lost at the World Championship final a couple of years ago. You know what I mean? Yeah. Honestly, Ding could beat him. I mean, that just shows you how tight it is between that level.
And this young Chinese player, Zhang, won easily 10-2. So, I mean, he's there.
Yeah, class act.
He's a class player. Anyway, from this edition, lads, of the Final Whistle. And by the way, Joe, we're looking forward to Grimsby. We want to go over to the party. I'm sure you organise some press tickets for us to go to their party when they come up to the League 2.
Oh, yeah.
But from Chris, from Joe, and from myself, lads, till we meet again next Monday night on another edition of the Final Whistle. Take care, good night, and God bless.
Night, lads.
Good night, lads.
Bye.
Last week, Liverpool and Man City were both playing.